Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Dipankar, and in this particular video we will discuss how we can call a remote action from Omniscript, and what that means is how we will going to call a Apex class from Omniscript, right? So let's go back to our Salesforce OmniStudio all and let's get started. So there is this Omniscript I have built in previously. You can go and watch that video as well. So let me give a quick demo overview. So we have done a custom source functionality in this particular Omniscript, right? Let's say if I type my name over here and if I click on get data, right, so it will get all the contacts with Dipankar in the first name, right? So you can see it gives us two contacts with Dipankar in the first name. So right now this particular button is an integration procedure and we are achieving it using an integration procedure, right? So what if we want to call an Apex class for that, right? Let's try to do that. So in the meantime, let me create a new version, right? And in the meantime, let me go to this documentation over here and let me try to explain. So using remote action, you can call an Apex class and method, right? And there is also a link to example provided by Salesforce, and they beautifully explained how you can configure your remote action, how you can pass the properties. I'll put both of these two links in the description, right? But for now, let's go and create a remote action for our Omniscript. Okay, so we have our Omniscript ready over here, and let me expand the steps. So basically this button is an integration procedure, right? So now we are going to replace or mimic the same behavior using a remote action, right? To build that, let's go to our build tab and drag the remote action over here, right? Let's do one thing. Let's try to sort it a bit and let's try to, yeah. Now let's change the method to call Apex. What I want to do is that the same thing, the same output that I am getting over here, I want to pass the same input to this remote action, and I also want to get the same output, right? So this integration procedure takes two things, right? One is account ID and one is first name, right? So let's try to do that. So we have this remote action over here, and to call the Apex class, right? So we need to give the class name over here and the method name over here. So let's suppose we are going to build a class name that is called as OmniStudio remote action, right? And let's try to give a method, right? So let's try to give the method name as get filtered contacts, right? So we have not yet built this class and method. We are going to build this class and methods, right? And again, in this integration procedure we are passing some input parameters, right? So we are passing using the extra payloads. It's always a best practice to check this checkbox, send only extra payload, and pass everything you want to pass inside extra payload, so that you don't overburden your inputs, right? Else it will pass the entire JSON data as an input to the Apex. So let's come over here and let's try to do the same thing. So let's pass the account ID, and the account ID I am passing as the context ID. Let me actually copy these two things. So let's go to remote properties. Let's copy this context ID and contact first name. So let's come to this the remote properties of here of the Apex remote action, and for the account ID let me give the context ID, and for the first name let me give the contact first name, right? And I am checking this send only extra payload. So contact first name is nothing but this text block, right? Whatever I am writing over here I want to pass the data to here, right? And let's check the validation to none. So these are the two things we need to pass as an input, right? Now let's go back and create our Apex class, right? So to create an Apex class, I'm coming to this developer console. I'll write new and click on Apex class. I'll copy the name and paste it over here. OmniStudio remote action. You can give any name. but since you have given this remote class name, I am getting it and giving it as a class name. And again we need two things, right? We need the method. Let me give the name as public static void, or maybe method name. This is what we expect, right? But let's go back to our documentation and see what it says. So let's come to this example tab over here. They have even given a picture over here, but let's go to this text. So if you see over here, Salesforce has given a template to us. They have implemented the namespace.velocity open interface, and they are also using a global boolean invoke method, right? And this invoke method takes the map of input, output, and the options, and it finally returns as a true and false value based on the success or error, right? So let's try to take this template and let's try to use it, right? So let's try to copy this one, right? Let's come over the develop console and let me try with global with sharing and implements namespace.velocity open interface, right? So I think the namespace for us should be omnistudio. I can come over here and go to install packages, right? So if you see the namespace is omnistudio for us, right? You might be having namespace like velocity underscore ins or velocity underscore cmd based on the communication or health cloud that we are working, but for our case it's omnistudio, right? So that's why we are going the namespace by omnistudio. Clicking on save, but it says there is an error, right? Boolean omnistudio velocity open interface dot invoke method. Basically we have to implement the invoke method, right? So let me go and copy this one. So let's come over here and I have copied this one, and since this boolean, right? So let me give it as a boolean value, right? And they are also using a try catch, right? Try followed by catch. So in case there is exception, the result should be false, and finally it should return the result as it is, right? So this is what we need to implement, right? So let's click on save to see if we are getting the error or not, right? So basically our template is ready, and now we'll see how we can use our method, right? So the first thing they have given over here, let me scroll down to the left. So this says if the method name equals to this, then do your own implementation, right? So let's copy this one as well. So inside the try block, let's suppose for our case the method name we are passing get filtered contacts, right? So let's go and use that one. So what that means is if with the get filtered contacts is the method, then I don't think we just need to use this one, right? So this will not work. So what we can do is that, so we can call this filter contact method, right? So to call the filter contact method, we can come over here and just call the filter contact methods as it is, right? So let me quickly format it little bit. So you think still there is no error, right? So in case of filter contacts, I can also write as filter contacts, right? But here is the thing. So since we are calling the filter contacts, we also need the input, output, and the options, right? So let me do one thing. let me prepare the input and pass it to the filter contacts. So what we are going to do is that we are also going to get the output, right? And we are also passing the inputs, right? So let me come over here, filter contacts, there is a typo over here, let me fix that. So to get, let's suppose we want to get the account ID as an input that we have given over here, right? So what we can write is string account ID should be equals to the input that we are getting here, right? So what we can do, input map dot get the account ID that we are getting from the Omniscript, right? And similarly we can explicitly typecast it to string as well. And again, let's suppose we also want to get the first name over here, right? So for the first name, let's try to get the first name. So for the first name, what we can do, we can write string first name and inputs dot get first name, right? And we can do also another thing. Let's suppose where the first name we are getting it is null, right? And we want to pass this first name anyhow to this filter context, right? So what we can do over here, we can check, we can give a ternary operator, right? If this is not equals to null, then we should be getting the first name, right? Else we'll pass the first name as a blank, right? And the second thing, let's configure how we can get our filter contact. Let's suppose we also want to, let's suppose, pass as an integration procedure, right? So we can let's suppose the integration procedure that we are calling before, right? The integration procedure is demo transfer account contact details. Let's suppose we want to pass this value as well. So now what we are going to do, we have passed two dynamic values and we are going to pass one hardcode value. So let me give us procedure name, right? And this procedure name, I'll simply write the name of the integration procedure. So again, to get the procedure name, I will again come here and suppose I'll write string procedure name should be string of input map dot get the procedure name, right? And what now we are trying to do over here, we want to pass all these values, right? So what we can do, let's suppose we want to pass this account ID, and let's suppose we want to pass this first name from here, right? And let's suppose we want to pass the procedure name as well, right? So these three things are string, right? So we have to also mention it over here, the type that we are expecting, right? So all of them are string, right? And the second thing, let's suppose I want to get something as an output, right? So what I can do over here, let me format this again. So what I can do here, if let's suppose I want to pass something from this Apex class to the Omniscript as an output, so I'll copy this out map. So out map, there is a called put method. So in put method, let's suppose I want to pass some key, right? So in key I can give any hardcode value or any dynamic value, right? So let me try with giving a custom value over here. So right now we are not using this. Let's try to comment this out. So we'll just go to our Omniscript and see if the key value will be populated with custom value or not, right? So let's come to our Omniscript. Let's click on preview, right? And we also need one more thing. Let me come to here and let's give this context ID to it. So I'll give this context ID and let's refresh this once again. So if you see over here, let's call this click on this call apex button to see what's happening. So I'm clicking on this call apex button, right? So if I expand it, So the request that we are passing is account ID, first name and procedure name, and the response we are getting key as a custom value, right? And let's go to that data JSON to see if the key equals to custom value is not present or it is present in the data JSON. So let's collapse this, and you can see the key is equals to custom value is present over here, right? But let's suppose we want to give the update the entire step data over here, right? So that's what we are doing in this integration procedure, right? So let me go to the design panel over here, and we are calling this integration procedure over here, and this is the integration procedure. And if I give the first name, let's suppose I give the first name and I give the account ID and try to execute it, right? So it gives us all the entire step data over here, right? So what we are going to do, let's go back to our Omniscript, and in this Omniscript let's try to call this integration procedure again from the Omniscript, and let's try to get the data over there. So in my previous video I have explained how we can call the integration procedure from Apex, right? So since we are already able to call this integration procedure from Apex, and it also returns a map of a string comma object as step data, right? And to verify it, we can go to the anonymous window, right? We can copy this run integration procedure from Apex, then the value, right? And this takes let's suppose 3 parameters, right? The account ID, let's try to pass the account ID over here. So this is the account ID I'm trying to pass. The second thing let's try to pass is the first name. Let's give the first name as blank this case, right? And let's give the second thing, the procedure name, right? The procedure name that we have copied over here is demo transform account contact details, right? And if we come to this integration procedure, this is the integration procedure, and the integration procedure we are getting it from the procedure configuration as type subtype, right? So if we call this integration procedure over here, right? So let's try to call it, and we know that whatever the value we are returning from this Apex method, we are also doing the debug, right? So let's click on open log and try to execute it once, right? Okay, so you can see we are getting all these values over here, right? So the reason I am explaining this Apex class over here, because we want to call this Apex class from this our omnistudio remote action, right? So what we are trying to do is, so we'll just come over here, right? And let's copy this filter contacts, and in this filter contacts, right, what we can do the same thing, that we called from this integration anonymous window, we can call the same method over here, right? And in place of account ID, first name and procedure name, right, that we are passing, we'll pass the same thing, and in this way we'll make it dynamic, right? And one more thing, and from here we know that it will return a map of string comma object, right? So instead of giving it void, let's try to change the return type, and in here we can write return, and it will return this map, right? And again, so whatever the value we are trying to get, right? Let's suppose I want to put the out map output, let's suppose we are getting the value from this Omniscript, right? So for now we have given the key as custom value, right? If I want to give this step data over here, so let's come over here, and actually let's try to copy this and step data. So I'll come to the dev console, in the key I'll write step data, and in the value what I'll do, I'll directly call this one, right? Because I know that this is giving me all the contacts, right? So either you get this value or directly declare it, or you can directly call it. So there are multiple ways. So it's depend on how you want to write your code, right? So let me click on save. right? So I think that's all about how you can implement your remote action and call your Apex class from Omniscript. So let me explain it again what we have done over here. So when we want to call our Apex class from Omniscript, we want to implement this omnistudio.velocity open interface, and this open interface should always implement this method that is called invoke method. And this invoke method is of boolean type, right? It always gives true or false value, and inside this boolean type we'll access all the values, the method name, input, and the options that we are passing from the Omniscript over here. And if we want to pass anything as an output to the Omniscript, we will refer the out map, and inside out map if we want to pass anything from the value, we'll call the out map dot put method, and inside put method we will give the key and the value that we want to pass over to the Omniscript, right? So that's it. So let's come back over here, right? So let me refresh this once, right? So let's try to see if both of our buttons work or not, right? This is call Apex and this is get data, right? So get data is basically the integration procedure, and the call Apex is our custom remote action. So let's suppose I want to get the data in which the name is Dipankar, right? So let me click on this call Apex button. So you can see this call Apex called, and it gives you all the names, all the contacts whose name contains Dipankar as a first name, right? And we can also see in the debug log the response that we are getting, right? And let's suppose I want to trim this to D, right? So let's try to click on get data. Now it should get all the data uh, whose name contains D, right? Not specifically Dipankar. So let's click on this get data. So you can see our integration procedure is also working. And let's try to give Edward, right? Or let's try to give only J, and let's click on call Apex, right? So again it calls the remote action, and it gives you all the data with J, right? So and if we don't give anything and click on call Apex, it gives you all the contacts, right? So this is a way in which we can call the Apex class from Omniscript using remote action, right? So let me go back and recap everything quickly. So to call the remote action, we have to configure a remote action over here. It's not mandatory that you call the remote action inside step, you can call it outside also. There the procedure and the configuration will be still same. The thing that you need is you have to come to remote properties, you have to mention the class name and method name. Second thing, whatever the payloads you want to pass as input, you can give it as here. I am always trying to give the as extra payload and trying to send only extra payload because this is a best practice. And whatever the data we are passing, right, we have to go to this Omniscript class and this method, right? So this is the Omniscript class, right? And in Omniscript class, if you want to refer this method, right, we just have to go to invoke method, and the method name should equals to this method name, right? And if this method name equals to get filter context, it will execute all the lines inside this code block, right? And inside code block, if we want to access this account ID, first name, and procedure name, we can access by referring the input map over here, right? And if we want to give any output to this JSON data, we can give the output by referencing the out map method, right? So if you want to give the key or and value, so we will write outmap dot put the key, we can write it over here, and the value that we want to get give to the Omniscript. And same thing I have done over here, I have given the outmap dot put key is equals to step data, and the value I am giving it over here. And this can be anything, it can be hard coded or it can be dynamic value, right? And this filter contacts, I am just calling it from here, and I am trying to return the value as a map of string comma object that I have already built in my previous video. You can go and watch if you want to, right? It's just returning the value as a map of string comma objects, and this value will be referred inside step data node, right? So this is all about how we can call a remote action or apex class from Omniscript. So that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.